So tomorrow we're leaving for Mount Bulusan in southern Luzon, but before we go, I wanted to take a little time to explain to everyone what exactly a harvestman, or daddy longlegs, really is. And to help me, since I'm in Manila, I bought manila paper, and I have some magic markers to help too. So give me a second, I'll set up the paper, and then we'll have a quick talk about the taxonomy of daddy longlegs. So in the most general sense, daddy longlegs belong to the phylum Arthropoda. Now a phylum is a big group of animals that has a particular body design, a particular body plan. And the arthropods, phylum Arthropoda, these are all the ones that have a hard exoskeleton, lots of body segments, and what gives them their name, they have a jointed leg. So arthropod means jointed foot. So all the arthropods have this body plan that you can picture pretty easily if you picture a shrimp. So let's draw a shrimp really quick and you can see what I'm talking about. So there's this long tail. This is the part that we like to eat. And the tail has lots of segments that you can see. So these segments here. And at the end there's a little flipper, we call it a telson. That's at the end here. And when you get up to here, there's a carapace, usually has a point at the front. And they'll often have long antennae and a little eye here. And then out from under this carapace stick the appendages, the legs. And these appendages have joints in them. So there'll be an article here, and then an article here, and there'll be a joint in between. And there'll be several of them, and they'll be sticking out from under the carapace here. And maybe the first ones are really big for grasping prey. And so there'll be a big muscular one here, a joint, and then something that has lots of teeth on it, like this. And then there'll be the mouth parts in here. So this would be sort of your generalized arthropod. And what makes the different groups of arthropods, what helps us identify them, is the number and types of appendages that they have and on which segments those appendages lie. For example, the antennae. Not all arthropods have antennae. Walking legs. Well, some groups of arthropods, a certain appendages is used for walking around. In another group of arthropods, that same appendage has been modified or has evolved into something that's used for sensing the environment. Now, the arthropods have 4 living subphyla, and those are the crustaceans, which is what shrimps are, so there's subphylum Crustacea. Then there are the hexapods. Hexapods are all the arthropods that have generally 3 pairs of legs, 6 legs, and you know who those are. Those are the insects. So the butterflies, the ants, the bees, the wasps, the beetles, the flies, those are all the hexapods. Then there are the myriapods, meaning many feet, and those are the centipedes and the millipedes. They have all these segments that look very similar, and on each segment they either have 1 pair of legs, centipedes, or 2 pairs of legs. Those are the millipedes, and those are all the myriapods. And then there's this subphylum called the chelicerates, or Chelicerata. Now the chelicerates is a group that has daddy longlegs in it. But the funny thing is, a really good way to picture what a chelicerate is to think of a horseshoe crab. So you may have been to the beach and seen these big round arthropods that are up in the sand, and we call them horseshoe crabs. But crabs are actually members of Crustacea. Horseshoe crabs are chelicerates, and if you turn them over, you can see why. They have this big round part in the front. That's kind of like a big shield that covers up all the really interesting stuff underneath. But if you turn them over, you'll see that there's a mouth in the middle, and right in front of the mouth, there are 2 little appendages that help them eat. And those are called the chelicers, and all the chelicerates have chelicers. They then have 5 pairs of appendages. Usually, the second pair is modified for feeling. We call those palps. But in horseshoe crabs, all 5 pairs are modified for walking. And so you'll see these 5 pairs of appendages, all on either side of the mouth. And then you see the other big part of a chelicerate body plan, which is that there's a front part to the body, and then there's a big hinge or a big connection or joint here, and then there's a hind part to the body. And sometimes there's even a thing on the end, like in horseshoe crabs, they have that long pointed telson. Well, daddy longlegs are chelicerates, and so let's look at what the groups are within Chelicerata. The subphylum Chelicerata includes 3 classes, and I've already mentioned the first one, the horseshoe crabs. That's class Meristomata. The second class is also marine, but rarely seen. These are the sea spiders in the class Pycnogonida. They have disproportionately small bodies but long legs. Now the third class is seen everywhere on land. These are the arachnids, class Arachnida. They include spiders, of course, but they also include lots of other interesting chelicerates. And what's confusing about arachnids is several different groups of them have evolved into very similar body forms, but they're not that closely related. So let's go through the orders of arachnids and ask, where do daddy longlegs fall, and who are their closest relatives? So I've listed the orders of arachnids. Now, some of these animals are really rare and only ever seen by experts. And all of the orders, except for scorpions, have scientific names that most people have never heard. The common names of these animals often reflect the fact that arachnids have evolved in many cases to look somewhat similar to each other, even if they're not closely related. For example, the Ricynulae are called the hooded tick spiders, but ticks are in this order and spiders are in this one. And we all know the scorpions, but did you know that there are pseudoscorpions? These are fake scorpions, or little tiny arachnids that generally resemble scorpions because they have big palps, but they're not closely related at all. Now, daddy longlegs are often called spiders. This is a really common mistake and usually only picked up on by experts. But spiders are in Araneae, which is this order, and daddy longlegs are in Opiliones, a completely different order. Now you might think, well, okay, they're in different orders, but they're probably pretty closely related. Actually, the closest relative to Opiliones are the scorpions. Let's talk for a second about what makes a daddy longlegs different from a spider. The easiest thing to look for is a narrow constriction between the front part, where you have the legs, the eyes, and the mouth, and the hind part. If you have such a constriction, it's probably a spider. If you don't, it's probably a daddy longlegs. There are other important differences, such as the fact that in spiders, the chelicers have been modified into venom-delivering fangs. Daddy longlegs don't make venom, and they don't have fangs. Their chelicers are little pinchers that help put food in their mouths. Now, spiders often make silk from which they make all kinds of cool webs, but daddy longlegs don't make silk. They don't make webs. Within Opiliones, there are 4 suborders. The one that you see often around your wood pile or down in your basement, the one with the little round body and the big long legs, those are in the order Eupnoi, and they're the ones that have given the group their common name, daddy longlegs. They live in the Philippines and we're collecting them here. Now another suborder are the Dysnoi, but they don't live in the Philippines and we're not looking for them. A suborder we're finding all over the Philippines are the Laniatories. These Opiliones often have spines or other ornamentation on their body. Now here in the Philippines, they're small animals, but in South America, they've often evolved into big spectacular animals with different colors and spines all over their legs. Now I said there were 4 suborders, and the 4th one is going to take me a second to write because it has a really big name. These are the Scyphophthalmi. The Scyphophthalmi are really rare in the Philippines. We only know 4 specimens of them. 2 were collected on Palawan, an adult and a juvenile, and 2 juveniles were collected on Mindanao. The reason why we're so interested in Scyphophthalmi is that they really don't like to go anywhere. And when you find 2 Scyphophthalmi on different landmasses and they're related, the chances are those landmasses were once connected. Now, many people have never seen Scyphophthalmi, although they live all over the world, because they often look like little pieces of dirt or seeds, and they curl up into a ball when they've been disturbed. They walk on 4 pairs of appendages, and then in the front they have a pair of palps that they use to sense their environment. These are the tops of their chelicers, which are folded under and have pinchers to help put food in their mouths. The distinguishing feature of Scyphophthalmi are these bumps on the sides of the fronts of their bodies. These are glands called ozophores. In Southeast Asia, many species also have a pair of simple eyes near the ozophores. They have thick, short, fat legs, so they don't really deserve the name daddy longlegs, and we call them mite harvestmen. The really cool thing about Scyphophthalmi is that they're distributed all over the world, but they don't really like to go anywhere. The best explanation for how they're distributed all over the world is that they were once all over the supercontinent Pangaea 200 million years ago, and when it broke apart to give us the continents we have today, they just rode along.